So here we are on the second day of transitioning from standard form into factored form. So yesterday we covered the big X, which is over here to the left. So the big X covers really step 3, step 4. So now we are starting at step 5. So we just have 3 steps left to cover, and what step 5 says to do is to fill in the box. So when we are filling in the box, the top left box that you can see that it's already highlighted in blue, and then it has ax squared in it. Top left is always going to be your first term, or that ax squared term. In this case, it is x squared. And then the bottom right box is always going to be your c. In this case is 2. So those two you can actually fill in even before you do the big X. The top left of the box and the bottom right of the box will always be your ax squared and your c. So now we're going to take the 2 factors that we found yesterday, the 1x and the 2x that we got from our big X, and we're going to plug those in. And it doesn't matter where you put them. We're going to put the 1x in the bottom left and the 2x in the top right. So now, once you get to that point, you have to factor out the GCF. Now, how you factor it out is you're going to work in rows and columns. So this box here, we're going to do it first. And so you're going to factor out the 2x and the x squared. So what does x squared and 2x have in common? And the only thing they have in common is 1x. Then you're going to go to the bottom row. So you have 2 and you have 1x. Well, they don't share an x and they don't share a 2. So the GCF between 1x and 2 is simply going to be 1. So then we got to go up. And we got to do this column. So now we have x squared and x, and what they have in common, or their GCF, is an x. And then we have the 2x and the 2, factor that column, and what they have in common is a 2. So that is why we did all the GCF, the greatest common factor, last week, was to bring us to this point here to where we can factor out of the box. So you guys remember about 3 weeks ago, we actually took the x and the 2 and the x and the 1 on the left and the right, and then we filled in our box as we converted factored form into standard form. So now our final answer is we're going to take the left side, the x and the 1, and we're going to write it in parentheses. And then we're going to take the top and we're going to write it as our parentheses. And this will be step 7, which is to rewrite it as 2 factors. And that is how you get your answer. So now from our example yesterday for this one, we can go ahead and draw our box. And now what always goes in the top left is that first term. So we have m squared, and then the bottom right is always c, which is 40. And now we have our 2 factors that we found yesterday, and we're just going to put those into the box. And now we're just going to pull out the GCF. Now, if we do this first row, so we have m squared and negative 10m, the only thing they have in common, because there is a 1 out in front of the m squared, is just an m. Or you could say you could also pull out an m, but we know that 1m is the same thing as just m. So now the second row, or the bottom row, we have negative 4m, and we have 40. So what's the greatest common factor between -4 and 40? And the way that I like to do this is I ask myself, will 4 go into 40 evenly? And it does. So therefore, we can pull out a 4. But we also have to pay attention to, when we are factoring this thing out, that our leading term, this -4m, is negative. So we have to also pull out a negative. So now we go to our rows or our columns up top, and we have m squared and -4m. Well, what they have in common is an m. And then the second row, they have -10m and 40. So once again, I take the smallest number, which is 10, and I ask myself, will that go into 40 evenly? And it will. 10 times 4 is 40. So therefore, we can pull out the smaller number, which is 10. And we also have to pay attention to the negative. So now our answer is going to be m minus 4 and m minus 10. All right, so this is that second example. I would go ahead and pause it if you want to try to go ahead and work this one on your own. All right, so first things first, I would go ahead and draw my box. Now we know the top left is always going to be ax squared, or that first term. In this case, it's m squared. And then the bottom right is always going to be c, which is that -12. And just make sure you're paying attention to that sign. You got to bring it with it. And then you're going to insert your two factors. So we have 3m, and we have -4m. So now we're going to factor it out. So m squared and -4m, their greatest common factor is an m. Then we have 3m and -12. Will 3 go into 12 evenly? It will. So therefore, we're going to pull out a 3. Then we have m squared and 3m. So we pull out an m. And then we have -4m and 12. We ask ourselves, will 4 go into 12 evenly? And it will. So therefore, we're going to pull out a 4. Got to also pay attention to the negative. And now we have our factors. So we have m plus 3 and m minus 4. And that is how you figure out factored form. Now, onto the delta math real quick. This is how it's going to be, guys. It says factor. It's going to give you standard form. And so you're going to go ahead and do it just like we've been doing our examples. You'll have your big X, and you'll have your box. And so for this one, you're going to have 40x squared -13x. You know this is going to be x squared, and you know that's going to be 40. So you set it up the exact same way. You will go through, you would find your factors of 40. And you know that your B is negative, your C is positive. So therefore, you know that your bigger term are all going to have to be negative. So set it up like that and then solve it. So you do it the exact same way as you do the other one. So don't let it, even though it's switching over to Delta Math, confuse you. It's just kind of combining all the steps that we've been doing as of yesterday and today. So please, once again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or to just submit your questions on Google Classroom, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Thank you, guys.